Hello everyone, this is Wykkyd. I'm here to talk to you today about Gadgets Outfitter. It's an add-on that I wrote that helps me switch gear between my wardrobe, my bags, and my worn gear. I'm going to very quickly show you the gear that I'm wearing and my wardrobe slot so that you can see what happens when I switch gear, and then I'll go into how to configure this add-on. I'm currently wearing my PvE gear with a two-handed weapon. If you look at my wardrobes, you'll see that I have my tank gear in a wardrobe slot, I have my DPS gear in another wardrobe slot, and I have a couple other wardrobe slots that have mixture of wardrobe costume items and stack resist gear. So I'm going to go back to my normal displayed gear, and I'll open my bag so that you can see what happens when I switch gear from one spec to another. And please note as you watch this, if you see a little green swirl moving around on screen, that's trailing my mouse. The video capture that I'm using doesn't capture the mouse cursor. So without further ado, I'm going to actually use the outfitter buttons at the bottom of my minimap to change spec and gear from my two-handed normal DPS set to my PvP sword and board set. And it's done. So that switched all of my armor between my wardrobe slot and what I was wearing, and it switched my weapons and trinkets and rings and such from my bag. If I go to the slot in my wardrobes that used to be PvP gear, it now displays all of the PvE gear that I was wearing. So everything traded places between worn and wardrobe. And that was the actual initial motivation for this entire add-on. So without further ado, I'm going to switch back and then show you how I configure all of this to start with. So for anyone that's new to this, this is a gadget. So gadgets is an add-on suite that allows you to add individual gadgets or add-ons to your screen with relative ease and through a common configuration interface. So it starts with this little button here, and if you've just configured this for the first time, this button may not actually be on your screen yet. If you've installed it while you were logged in, especially so, you'll have to log out and log back in. This button should most of the time appear dead center of your screen, and then you can just drag it off to wherever you want. For some reason on my wife's character, it started off on her minimap right below her KBM button, like underneath it. So she had to move her KBM button to find the gadgets button, and I'm just putting that out there for anybody that's new to gadgets. If you don't see the gear, don't get frustrated. You may just have to look for it. So once you know where that button is, you can right-click on that button to add a gadget, unlock your gadgets. Unlocking gadgets just shows every gadget on your screen with a little gear above each one so that you can move them around, or right-click on the gears to modify, delete, copy, etc. So from here, I'm actually going to add a gadget to my screen, and I'm going to go through this massive list of gadgets, which I very strongly encourage you to explore later. I'm going to pick out an outfitter set button. This is going to create a button similar to these 5 that I have underneath my minimap. And in this case, it doesn't really matter what I pick. This is only temporary. But just to point out, I can mouse over the images here in this image selector, and when I scroll, it scrolls through the images. It's a little easier to use than grabbing the slider by hand. I'm going to start off with creating a button on screen that's doesn't really matter what it looks like. Let's use the XP crystal, and I'm going to tell this one to grow to the left just to be different, and go ahead and click create. So it appears over here on the left side of the screen underneath my super meter, and I can grab that little gear and move it anywhere I want. In this case, I'm going to put it right over top of my buff bars for my unit frame. Then I'll left click the gear again on the master gadget icon, and all of the gadgets lock in place. Right now I've got this add-on that really does nothing, except when I right click I can pull up the configuration window and start building an armor set. To make this easier on myself, I'm going to create armor sets based off of the ones I already have, but you can actually go in and say open up one of your wardrobe slots on one screen and say pull one of those items over, drop it off in the window, and it will trade places with the item you're currently wearing. Because the gear in the window on the left, which is the outfitter window, matches the gear that I'm currently wearing. So you can see Pauldrons of Molten Seas over on the left, and Pauldrons of Burning Command are over on the right. So I have PvE DPS gear on, except for my shoulders. I just apparently put on my tank shoulders. So we'll go with that, and we'll just go ahead and drag in a hodgepodge of gear. Put on my tank belt. I thought I was trying to put it into my wardrobe because I right-clicked it. Let's switch to a wardrobe. And we'll put on one PvP ring, the old pendant of the shark, and maybe gains aftershock, and strength, and endurance seal. Random gear you would probably never want to wear a combination of. And we'll go with, say, one Carceran War Axe and a PvP shield. Just to show how, this all works. Give it a fake name, and then we'll say, yes, I want it to be an icon button. We change the icon that I want it to be. Let's make this a pair of pants. I'll change my role to role number 3 when I switch to this, and then I'm just going to click save. So now that should be built. It's gonna draw, but it's a better bet to reload UI before you do that. I'm gonna go ahead and create a second set though, and in this case I'm gonna actually switch to my tank set just to show you that even though I was wearing completely random gear, it went and dug up all of my gear and put it on. And I'm gonna save this as another new set called new, and give this an icon, and I'll tell it to be that turkey, which is Feast of Cooperation, I believe. I'll tell this guy to be roll 5, which I'm not even sure what it is off the top of my head, and I'm going to click save. So now I should have a pair of pants and a turkey in that button, and I'm going to follow my own advice and reload UI. So here we are. I've got my new button, which shows a pair of pants and a turkey. Let's switch. So now this is wearing, I switched wardrobe by the way, this is my little wardrobe bar. I'm wearing my DPS gear, but tank shoulders, and random collection of stuff I would never equip side by side. So you can see my axe and shield equipped. So now I'm going to switch over to the other set, which is the turkey. My normal tank set actually. And there's my normal tank gear. So it switches pretty fast. The buttons are actually pretty easy to create. If I decide I don't like the look of a given button, then I can actually go and modify that gadget by right-clicking, modify gadget. I can change the default icon of it and make it anything I want. That stupid costume hat. Excuse me. And pretty much play with it to my heart's content. Now, let me go ahead and delete that temporary gadget I created for this demo, and I'll show you the ones that I actually have as part of my normal set. So I actually have mine broken down in a pretty clever way, I think. For my two-handed set, I've got my 5113-2 champ spec with BM Crystal. The same thing, so it's not going to change spec with Champ Crystal. The same thing with Champ's Crystal and the, Conquest Trinket, so that I can change basically what I'm doing based on the different sets of gear I want to start with when I switch. All three of those first ones will switch role if I'm not already in that role. The next one, however, only switches my Fire Sigil and my Seal. The next one is Earth Sigil and Seal. And the final one switches Fire Sigil, the seal that matches it, and switches out two pieces of gear that actually have fire runes on them. I have that same basic scenario set up for each of the different trees that I built, if you will, where I have the normal DPS setup plus then just resist swaps. So technically speaking, if I'm sitting here in this one, I could theoretically go and just click this guy, and it's only going to switch the two pieces of gear, and it's not going to change spec because I didn't tell it to when I configured it. To show you how that's set up, I can go in here and say, let's say max fire, for example, and I'll load that guy. Now you can see these different boxes are red or disabled. And what that's doing for me is when it switches gear, it's not actually going to switch that piece of gear. It's just not going to do it. It'll switch whatever's lit up, but it won't switch what I've disabled. So that's what these little X's are for that are on the side of all of these images, and they do actually function. Now there is some weirdness between windows. If I go and I do all these ignored settings and I change icon here and all of that, if I go into another one of the outfitter sets without doing a reload UI, I get some weirdness. Some things just don't work. As you can see, I'm clicking change icon and it doesn't bring it up. When that happens, I'm working on that bug, but when that happens, just go ahead and reload UI and you'll be fine. But I wanted to show how I've got mine set up. I had some people message me talking about tooltips and things like that, and I thought that a little bit better advice on grouping and getting things set up so that you didn't necessarily need the tooltips might help some people. I find it better to spread things out like this and build multiple buttons than to try and jam it all into one button like NK Wardrobe did. So enjoy. If you have any questions or concerns or run into any bugs, feel free to email me at wykkyd.gaming@gmail.com, and have fun in Rift.